Well, I use the word dislocation as a shorthand to refer to the fact that in contemporary society, people are cut off from all kinds of things which were formerly important. For example, many people are cut off from their families, and many people are cut off from being able to trust their nation, and many people are cut off from religion, and many people are cut off from just a local community, a community in which people are supportive. And so I use the word dislocation for that because I suppose it's a medical metaphor. It's like your shoulder could be dislocated. That doesn't mean it's amputated. It's still there. Your arm is still there, but doesn't articulate anymore. And that's what I mean. That many people are not articulating very well with their society. And we could say, well, that's their fault. They're not trying hard enough. But it isn't that. It's that happens in societies to masses of people at the same time. For example, here in Western Canada, where we're speaking, we had thousands of people who were not dislocated and had essentially no addiction problem. I'm talking about the Native Indians in this place. And I've done a lot of work learning about the Native Indians in this place. They had essentially zero dislocation because their tribal groups were very tight, they're very solid and well integrated, and they had religions and they had leaders and they had traditions and all this stuff. So they weren't dislocated and they had no addiction. And then along came us guys from Northern Europe, and we said, well, look, you can't have that religion anymore, and you can't have that tribal government anymore, and you can't catch all the whales you want anymore, and shoot all the moose you want, and catch all the salmon you want anymore, but you can't have a nice village, and we'll give you a pickup truck. Those guys became, that's super dislocated. And what happened, well, these people went from no addiction to basically, in many places, 100% alcohol addiction. And then we said, well, why is that? Why are these guys getting addicted? And the answer was, they just can't handle alcohol. But that's not the answer. The answer is they just can't handle dislocation, and nobody can handle dislocation. And when you're dislocated, that is, in the sense that I've described it, when you're dislocated, you've got to have something to fill the void, right? And one thing that will fill the void, now when these young men in the methadone clinic that I talked to, they were filling the void by becoming part of the junkie culture. And the natives can fill for years, for decades here in British Columbia, the natives were primarily filling the void by getting drunk with their friends and acting out and talking about how brave they were and what warriors they were, and going home and hitting their wives. Not cool. So I think that dislocation provides a major part of the explanation for addiction, but not all of it, but a major part of it. And we do these injustices, like we say, well, the natives are alcoholic because they can't handle alcohol, or we say, well, the guys in the city are junkies because they can't handle heroin. Well, that's not why.
The metaphor that comes to mind for me here, whenever I hear you speak about these things, is the whole story about fish swimming in water. I think in some ways, like human beings, we're all sort of swimming in an invisible cultural soup. And when you go to a new place and you disrupt that soup and you put new things into it, you take things, whatever, you're taking something away from people, and you're disrupting something that is as life-giving and as sustaining as food and water is for them. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think is that reasonable to say, is what I'm asking?
I think that's a very, very good way of putting it. And I think that's the true epidemic of our time, which is that we have so many people who are really not sustained by their communities and all the rest of it. And we have so many ways of turning to addiction. So, and then we say, oh, well, that's why they're taking heroin, or that's why they're drinking too much. But we really understate the problem, because it isn't just that they're taking heroin or they're drinking too much. They're also joining strange kinds of cults like QAnon, cults where which lead to violence and chaos, really. So I think we understate our addiction problem, but I do think the root cause is there in dislocation. But I want to qualify that, if I may. There's another thing we call addiction, and that's like, let's say a person just takes Prozac all the time, too much, and they won't stop, or they take OxyContin all the time, too much, they won't stop. Now, sometimes those people are not dislocated. Sometimes they just hurt, and these drugs are basically painkillers, either for emotional pain or physical pain, or both. So I don't think we can necessarily pin all serious addiction on dislocation, but a hell of a lot of it. And I think we have to recognize this other fact too, that people hurt, and sometimes they insist on taking these drugs because they can't stand the pain.